the long run, passivity won't pay off. It never pays off. If you want a life of meaning and transcendence, you're going to have to move. Aggression doesn't have to be toxic or damaging. Healthy aggression risks. It builds new things. It breaks through barriers. It's the key to living a life that matters. I'm Brian Tome, and this is The Aggressive Life. Do you know what bothers me? The thing I'm thinking right now, what really bothers me is when someone believes they're gifted. Oh, he's gifted. Oh, I'm gifted. Oh, they're special. As if some people just have an intrinsically easier time of succeeding. And some people do. There are many studies out that show that if you are good looking, you're going to get the nod in an interview over somebody who's just as qualified but isn't as good looking. And most of us are good looking or not good looking based on some genetic factors. So there's something there, but we take it too far when we start to believe, well, I haven't amounted to anything in my life thus far, so therefore I'm not going to amount to anything in the future. I do not think that just because you're successful and effective in grade school, you're going to be successful and effective in high school. I do not think that just because you're successful and effective in high school, you're going to be successful and effective in college. I do not believe that just because you came out of the gates with a great job at 22, that you're going to have a career and you're going to have money in the bank and you're going to have a life well lived at age 50. I don't believe that. You and I have to believe that our best days are ahead, not because the God lottery is going to come our way and God's going to dip his little sweet sugar finger into our life and make our life better, or there's a glory cloud right around the corner. And we've got to believe that there's been character that we are forming through our own decisions. Even though we may not be having a lot of success right now or a lot of wins right now, if we're living our life right now and doing the right things right now, there will be good things and better things ahead. There is such a thing as a late bloomer. And actually, the late bloomers are oftentimes those that bloom the longest and go the furthest. We're going to talk about that today. Eric Wood spent 9 years in the National Football League, and in his career, he was named the Pro Bowl. He was honored as the Buffalo Bills Man of the Year for his philanthropic work. And in 2017, he took every single offensive snap of the entire season. He suffered crushing injuries throughout his time of playing and still found a way to keep moving forward. Today, you can find him in the sports journalism world. He also hosts his own podcast called What's Next with Eric Wood. Hey, I can't wait to get to this guy today. Welcome to The Aggressive Life, Eric Wood.
I appreciate you having me on. Been a big fan of the show for a while. Big fan of yours. It's an honor coming on.
You are too kind. Flattery will get you everywhere, Eric. I just tell you, I wish that I had this conversation back in 1982 when my football coach shifted me from tight end to center. And I had the worst coaching staff ever. It was just like, okay, you're going to be center now. And then I was a center. So I wish I had the tools of the trade for you. Give us, as a center, someone's going to be a center for the first time. Maybe we have some peewee footballers listen to us, or some people in high school have crappy coaches like I do. Give me like 2 or 3 things. If you're a center, here's the key.
Yeah, I actually made a transition in high school from tight end to tackle, and then at the University of Louisville ended up being a center. But, the center controls the line of scrimmage. And so you're making all the calls. And that's generally when you get a little bit later in your football career. But your snaps have got to be perfect. Every play on a football field starts with the snap, and that's got to be perfect. You take it for granted. It's like guys shooting free throws. You just expect them to go in, and when they don't, it's a catastrophe. Even bigger in football when the ball hits the ground. So the snap's got to be perfect. But like any offensive lineman, number one, or the top qualities, attributes, smart, tough, and available.
Yeah, I have a friend of mine who says that the 3 A's are available, affable, and able. I think we all need our little metrics that tells us how to get ahead in life. I didn't have we weren't doing the shotgun back in high school in 1983. It was just good old school quarterback having his hands at my rear. It took a little time to get used to that. But the one thing I found was, and I just kind of discovered this on my own. Tell me if this is the right technique or not. I found the key for me was taking the first step simultaneously to hiking the ball. Is that right technique or wrong technique?
No, that's 100% right. And often when I see young kids trying to play the center position, it's not muscle memory yet to snap the football and move at the same time. And if you cannot do that, you will not last the position very long.
I also found it was next to impossible for me to do a drive block on somebody. When I was a tight end, I could drive block on somebody. But in center, I just found myself, or I just gotta get in front of the guy. Unless it's a crackdown block on a tackle, I can hit his hip. He doesn't even see me coming. Is that generally true, or was I just not good enough to drive block as a center?
No, as a center, you start the play with one hand between your legs. So a lot of it's positioning your head and your offhand to try and just get some type of leverage to where you're not going to get blown up. And, there was games in college where we'd play an inferior opponent and maybe you have a few highlight blocks, I'll call them, in those types of games. But when you get to the NFL, a stalemate is a win at any position across the line of scrimmage, especially at center.
Wow. That's deep right there. A stalemate is a win. I think that kind of relates to life. Sometimes we feel like if I'm not taking massive strides and going forward, then somehow I'm not going forward. You're right. I just go through my own mind. Like a lot of times it's like sometimes good enough is just good enough. That almost sounds awful to say on the aggressive life, but I think there's some lessons there for life.
No doubt. And when you're an offensive lineman, if you're trying to crush people and move them off the ball, there's going to be times where you're going to whiff. Especially as you get older in your career, defensive linemen get so much better. You have to be under control at all times. So going for those big, as I called them, highlight blocks, sometimes can leave you in big trouble as opposed to just being consistent on a play-by-play, snap-by-snap journey and then relating it back to life, like you said. Maybe that's the key. Maybe not taking these big swings for the fences, whether it's business, your faith walk, whether it's your athletic career. Maybe it's just day in and day out consistency that gets the job done in the end.
Dude, you're dropping truth bombs on us. Highlight blocks, going for those things where someone goes on their back. The number of people I know who've just tanked their life because they want to hit a home run every single time instead of just a base hit. But yet you were able to hit a home run with your career. I mean, of all the thousands of people who suit up in Pee Wee football or junior high or JV or varsity, you're one of the very few that went to the NFL, had some success. Was there anything that you can remember doing or thinking when you were 13, 14, 15 that you think were keys to helping you get to the next level?
I was fortunate to play at a good program growing up, and I learned a lot of lessons, had unbelievable opportunities coaching, but I didn't even start as a junior on our football team, our first state championship team, which I'm often reminded by buddies, and I'm fine with that. I take a lot of pride in that. I was our second tight end, so I saw the field, but I wasn't a full-time starter. And I say that because I didn't have these necessarily high hopes of playing in the NFL. I didn't have this big aha moment. Now, my senior year, I put on about 50 pounds, and I was a pretty dominant tackle. But I didn't get offered a scholarship till after the season. University of Louisville's coaches come and watch me play basketball and offer me a football scholarship after a basketball game, just seeing me kind of move around at that size. So, I didn't have these crazy aha moments. I kind of developed over time, got great opportunities. I mentioned great coaching, raised by parents that instilled a great work ethic in me. It was more short-term goals than maybe this long-term, like, I'm going to play in the NFL moment.
Boy, you just mentioned something that's been a fascinating topic I've been researching and reflecting on a lot lately. It's the idea of being a late bloomer. You talked about as a junior, you weren't starting. I mean, we wouldn't think that someone who's not starting as a junior would actually go on to make the Pro Bowl in the NFL. But I think there's this sort of brainwashing in our culture that unless you are hitting the select teams when you're really, really young, unless you're getting straight A's when you're in fifth grade, your life is not going to be all it is. And I'll tell you, for me, I was a late bloomer. I didn't start getting my stuff together until I was about 28, 29. there was zero that was commendable about my life. Everything I tried, left and right, was frustrating for me. Everything I tried, I was like low man in the totem pole, or at least fourth or fifth or something like that. Same as you in high school. I didn't start until I was a senior, and it was a crappy team. It wasn't Elder, it was a crappy team in Pittsburgh. And I find that fascinating today that so many of us are just giving up on dreams. We're settling for a low view of our potential only because we haven't bloomed early.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. And I have this conversation with so many pro athletes on my podcast. All the guys I talk to, they played all the sports as a kid. They didn't specialize in one thing. A lot of them were late bloomers. I trained with Clay Matthews for the Combine, and we were picked in consecutive picks in the draft. Both were at the Pro Bowl together, and neither of us started as a junior in high school. And this is Bruce Matthews' son.
Right.
This isn't Eric Wood. No professional athletes in the family. His dad played pro football. His brothers played pro football, and he didn't start either. He just took him a while to bloom, and then he ends up at USC, and he was the 29th pick in the draft, I believe. My year, one pick after me. So, yeah, it's wild that you would write off a kid because he's underdeveloped. And I don't know if you've read the book Outliers, but they talk at length about, eliminating kids early from teams, and then you get worse coaching and worse competition, and what that does, and they related it to the Canadian Olympic hockey team. It's a fascinating read, but it's a dangerous thing for development of kids, and it's a dangerous thing for pro sports and entertainment when you eliminate so much of the population because they didn't develop early.
Well, that's one of the things I've come across in this whole late blooming study and reflection I'm doing. Is one of the theories is that when you're a late bloomer, you have not had a lot of maybe natural talent, quote unquote natural talent, and you've had to reach deep into something you didn't have. You had to learn to deal with failure. You've had to learn to overcome obstacles, as opposed to here I am and I have this amazing hand-eye coordination to hit a ball. There's something in the growth. There's something in the struggle, and I think that's what my vision for this podcast is I want people to struggle. I want people to go through difficulty. And unless we embrace this value of aggressiveness, of I should be pushing, I should be going forward, versus, I hit the gene lottery and everything's easy for me. Unless we embrace this value, we're never going to ultimately reach our potential or see God do in us what he could actually do in us.
I agree with that 100%. And people that are late bloomers, you learn that work ethic. You've learned how to push through. You walk into an NFL locker room, and even the first round of the draft, half of the first round picks were from the SEC, and I would argue the other half were from either Ohio State or Clemson, and there was a couple, at least one, maybe two from USC. So you have all these blue bloods. You walk into an NFL locker room, it's 1AA school, it's MAC school, it's AAC school, and there's a number of blue chip prospects, but there are so many people that developed late, but you know what? They're smart. They're tough. They will not allow themselves to not make the team. And when you have 90 guys fighting for 53 spots and you got 4 weeks of training camp and preseason games to do it, it's the tough guys that are going to show up at the end. It's the ones that know their plays and that are reliable, because that's who the coaches want to put on the field on Sundays to defend their job, to keep their families in that city, to keep their kids at that same school. They got to have guys they can rely on. And to your point, I would argue a lot of times it's the late bloomers that have developed those reliable traits or aspects about their character that keep them there.
This is fascinating. We all know that the SEC and the schools you mentioned, they dominate on draft day. Are you saying that if you went to a winning locker room where there were 6, 7, 8-year-long starters, that those people would not be disproportionately SEC?
I would bet throughout a locker room, if you looked around and if you replaced nameplates with either conferences or if you just replaced it with school names, you'd be amazed by the diversity in there, as opposed to what you see in the first round. And a lot of what you see in the first round are these guys, and these guys are the early bloomers. They got scholarships to the big SEC schools when they were 15, 16, 17 years old. And so they developed early. They left for the pros early. Well, now they're 21 years old. Who knows what they're going to be like at 25? But then you got, but then there's a number of other guys that are coming in, still developing, still working on their craft, and they'll bypass those guys a lot of times.
That's really fascinating because I just, in my own mind, I go through, okay, who's who in the NFL I think of? Well, obviously Tom Brady. Nope, he was Michigan, not ACC, Ohio State, whatever. Just the ones I'm going through. Yeah, they don't have that pedigree. Wow. We probably should stop right now because you've already given me something to chew on. This is good stuff. But we also see this in high school, I think. When I go to my most depressing times for me is when I went to my high school reunion, which is why I stopped going at year 10. Like, I'm never going to one of those freaking things again. Never, ever, 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 ever. Because all the people who were the stars in high school, all the people who were the popular ones in high school, ended up not figuring it out by year 10, and it just got worse and worse. And I think that's another theory of you were an early bloomer. You hit the DNA lottery, and you never learned to manage your life. You never learned to do the things you didn't want to do. And I think it's a big, big, big lesson for us today.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that.
All right, so we're all sick of talking the coronavirus, but I just got to do it. I want to get back on football and all that kind of stuff. But, man, do you really think it's possible that we don't have an NFL season this year? Do you think that's possible?
I've been strictly instructed by bosses within the NFL and ESPN to not speculate on this. And at this point, there's a bunch of scenarios out there. They're prepared to move forward as soon as it's healthy enough to do so, or it's deemed healthy enough to do so. I can't imagine there would be no NFL games this year. It's hard for me to imagine some of these small towns that rely on so much money coming from college football to survive without college football. The economic effect would probably be a lot worse than the actual effect of the coronavirus if at-risk individuals stayed away from the stadium, which they likely need to do for a while anyways, whether this lifts or not. So yes, it would be hard for me to imagine no NFL season this year.
Yeah, man. Crazy times. Well, who knows what kind of great players we could see this year that we might not even see. But you played nine seasons. That's an eternity in the NFL. Not just to get to the NFL as elite, but to stick around for 9 years when I think the average career length is like 3 years. 9 years. I think that's actually more impressive, Eric, than you actually getting to the NFL. You stuck around for 9 years. That's like longevity, endurance. Was there anything that you were able to do to last that long?
A number of things. And honestly, I was so blessed to play the entire time with one organization, and I played for 7 head coaches in 9 years. 2 were interims, but there was a lot of turnover. So there was only 2 of us during that time frame that were with the Bills the entire time, me and our defensive tackle, Kyle Williams. And sometimes it's easier for me to brag on Kyle and what made him be able to stick around than it is to talk about myself. But, it's showing up for work every single day and being a pro, and that can be defined in a number of different ways. But acting like a professional each and every day, handling your business on the field, because the NFL is truly a business. And if you're not handling your business on the field, they will ship you out. They'll get the next guy in there, pouring into others in the organization and identifying yourself as a leader. Year 4 or 5 in my career, I started becoming a captain for the Buffalo Bills. And then, I always signed contracts early. I never hit free agency. And could that have been financially beneficial for me? Potentially. But I wanted to stay in Buffalo. If I would have left Buffalo and not ever got them out of that playoff drought, man, it would have stuck with me for the rest of my life.
Wait, were you there when the Bills got out of the playoff drought?
I was. My favorite football memory was when we beat Miami, down in Miami in 2017, and we go into the locker room, and there was 3-4 o'clock games, and the Cincinnati fans will likely remember this. We go in the locker room and we watch Andy Dalton throw a touchdown pass to Tyler Boyd, I believe, in overtime to beat the Baltimore Ravens. And the Bengals, my hometown team, sends the Bills to the playoffs, and we break our 17-year playoff drought.
That's amazing. Utterly amazing. So you break the playoff drought. You're there 9 years. I don't know what's more impressive, that you lasted 9 years or that you can still talk after 9 years. I mean, your hits are like crashing a car into the wall at 30 miles per hour. It sounds brutal. Does every hit feel like it's that brutal?
No, honestly, a lot of the hits you feel on the football field, you don't you hardly feel it. You remember this from playing growing up. When your adrenaline's going, you just don't feel it like you would if your adrenaline wasn't going. I mean, I've had my son or my daughter who are 4 and 2. I've had them pinch me or something, and I'll say ow. And I never say ow on a football field. And so when your adrenaline's going, you don't feel it. But there's a lot of Monday mornings you wake up and you definitely feel like you got hit by a car the previous day. And then I went through a number of injuries throughout my NFL career that were a long rehab process coming back, and not a ton of fun.
Do you have any concerns about long-term health to your brain coming out of that?
I do, honestly. And I don't have any debilitating effects right now. Still feel sharper than I ever have. But I have, and I went and saw a guy named Dr. Daniel Amen. He has clinics around the country, and I got some brain scans done. There was some concern about blood flow to certain areas that could lead to what they call a smoldering effect. You take all these head collisions, and then in your 50s, you start to develop some early dementia, and it's just kind of a smoldering effect. So I went through a 6-month kind of brain rehab program with them. And like I said, it wasn't like my wife said, hey, you need to go see him. I had just heard him on a few podcasts and thought, man, I'm going to go talk to this guy. And after 6 months of using his supplement program and then hyperbaric oxygen treatments, there was way better blood flow to those areas, a way improved brain scan. And so I've continued those, and hopefully in a few years from now, I'll be able to continue that rehab process. But there's a thing called neuroplasticity, and they're figuring out now that your brain, until the day you die, can either be improving or going in the wrong direction. And you can control that with lifestyle choices and not taking hits to the head and hyperbaric oxygen, and as well as thinking gratifying thoughts and working your thought patterns, and all that can affect your brain as well.
So you did the program, and you with your own eyeballs can see your brain before and after, and you can see a difference.
Yeah, definitely. And they use what's called a SPECT scan, and it makes it it's a lot easier to read than maybe an MRI. It's like almost like a rainbow colored 3D image of a brain that you can kind of move around at your will. And then there's black spots where there's lack of blood flow, and it's almost alarming when you see it the first time. But then you could compare it to others that were dramatically worse than yours and realize you're not in the worst position possible.
I always find it fascinating, Eric, when science comes along and says something that is in the Bible. Like one of my key verses I reflect on regularly is the book of Proverbs. It says, as a man thinketh, so is he. That we can control our thoughts, and our thoughts actually create our reality, and scientifically actually create our brain chemistry. The Bible also says taking every thought captive. I just find that like so many of us are just victims. Like, oh, this is just the way I am. Oh, this is just the way I feel. Oh, this is just the way I think. Well, is it the way you want to think? Is it the way you want to feel? Is it the way you want to be long term? You don't have to play with the cards that you're dealt. You could turn them in and get some new ones. You can actually take control of your life.
Yeah, I love it. And that's something I've been preaching to people during this COVID-19 time. And, right now, me and my family are healthy, and we've been affected by it. But there's so many people that have been affected worse. I've heard recently someone said, we're all in the same boat, but we're not necessarily all facing the same storm. And that was pretty convicting to me. But, I have buddies that are losing their small businesses. I have buddies that have been losing loved ones, and they're just so overwhelmed by this time right now. And I tell them, what are you doing to pour into yourself daily? What's your morning look like? How are you controlling your thought processes to set yourself up for success? And to your point, as a man thinketh, so he become. There are so many powerful visualization tools. There are so many scientific studies on the power of visualization and thinking something into existence in your life.
I know it sounds really weird and flaky, but no, it's the truth. If you're convinced that you're going to lose, then you're going to lose. If you're convinced that you're going to be depressed, you're going to be depressed. That's a big deal. So you've been able to use that visualization to be able to impact your physical brain. That's pretty impressive. Do you think, like, this stuff that you're dealing with, Eric, how much of the discipline you learn to be a top-notch athlete, how much of those skills or those disciplines translate in your regular life? Like if you were just to pick up financial consulting, do you think that the discipline you've learned would be impacting that career?
Yeah, I think it could. And a lot of things with professional sports translate to business. And I've gotten into a little bit of keynote speaking and whatnot. And there's so much that when you go in ways of preparation, how we prepared for games is how you should prepare for a call or a meeting or whatever it may be. And my same approach to each day, where every day I walked in the door and I had to be my best or my job was on the line, that translates to business. And there's so many correlations there. And in my personal life, I see it all the time. And I will say this, one of the hardest things to transition out of the NFL was the lack of structure and routine. So I've tried to get myself, even if my days don't look like a normal 9 to 5, my wife would tell you I'm anything but bored. But to get in a routine, to create a schedule, and to stay on that pattern has been extremely valuable for me. And I mentioned the injuries I've had. In 2009, I broke my leg in half, did the Joe Theismann. In 2010, I did a high ankle sprain, got surgery after the season. 2011, I did ACL, PCL, lateral meniscus. 2012, MCL. Broke my leg on Monday Night Football in 2016, and then I had my career-ending neck injury in 2017.
Jeez.
Well, the other day, just comparing that to real life, the other day,
one day I had this hangnail. One day, like I had this ingrown toenail. It really hurt me.
Exactly, and those do hurt, no doubt. But my daughter fell off her scooter head first the other day, no helmet on, scraped up her face and her hand a little bit. But then she got back on it and went down the same hill in the same day. And I said, baby, I am so proud of you. You know why? Because there were so many times when I broke my leg, and the next time I went out on the football field, all I could think about was, man, there's a lot of bodies on the ground right now. Who's going to be the next one to fall on my legs? But you keep playing, you push through, and then eventually you get over it. And she immediately hopped back on. It made me so proud. And it's like you relate so many things to sports. And this is if you stop playing sports after high school, you always relate things back to teamwork and pushing through and competing and whatever it may be.
Eric, you allow your kids to ride their bicycle without a helmet. What kind of parent are you? What kind of Neanderthal man are you?
Hey, we do now have 2 brand new helmets, courtesy of Amazon.com. Those showed up yesterday morning. That's
not the answer I was looking for. I was looking for.
Well, I've read your book, 5 Marks of a Man. One of my favorite books is Wild at Heart. I listened to your podcast, and I knew where you're going with that. But it's valuable for kids to fall, to get muddy, to have scrapes. It's terrible to say, but to get hurt, to get some bumps and bruises.
Yes.
That molds them. You can't keep these kids coddled. Yes. And as an adult, you can't live your life sitting in a cubicle and whether the outdoors is riding a motorcycle and camping like you, or I like to golf. It's a non-contact sport, and I get out there and compete. And, I don't get out on the golf course to drink 12 beers like some people do. Like, I want to get out there and compete.
If it's worth playing, it's worth winning.
Absolutely.
I just know that I'm pro helmets, sort of. When I ride my motorcycle and I'm going 90 miles an hour, I have a helmet on. That's fine. Doesn't diminish my thing. I do that. But I like to pick at that every once in a while, because I do think it's a sign of the passivity of our culture. I think it's a sign of the fear of our culture. I think it's a sign of us being so concerned about what might happen if I make an aggressive move, that if I don't have an insurance policy or a helmet or a safety plan or whatever, that I can't do it. And I just see too many people's lives are immobile. For me, the helmet, and by the way, if you're a parent, you want to put a helmet on your kid, that's okay. That's okay. I'm not saying you're really an awful parent. I'm just trying to push us a little bit, guys. I'm trying to push us because I think we're buying into a lie of safety that will not get our lives where it needs to go. And I'm with you, brother, about the broken arms, all that stuff. I think all my kids, I got 3 of them, all my kids together, my youngest one's 21, 1 broken arm between all my kids together. I had 2 broken arms and a broken finger by 3rd grade. That was just broken bones. I I do feel like there's something in endurance of us getting hurt and taking risks.
Yeah, absolutely. And you learn how to persevere through those times. And you get past it once, and then the next situation you're in doesn't seem nearly as bad. There's a lot of studies around normalizing discomfort. Waking up and taking a cold shower, which sucks. I don't like to take a cold shower in the morning, but when you get used to being uncomfortable, when you're used to persevering through things, it'll show up in other places in your life. And I don't want to get too far down a rabbit hole, but when you persevere through an injury, when you're a kid and you learn to scrape yourself and you don't get up and you don't make a team, but your dad makes you go out and play the sport anyways. When you do stuff like that, maybe your marriage lasts longer. Maybe you don't give up as a dad, a husband. Maybe you don't give up on your business as quick. And maybe it correlates to a whole lot more than we give it credit for.
All right, Eric, we're going to go into the lightning round. This is the round where I say something and you answer it as quick as possible. Are you up for the challenge?
Let's do it.
All right, we're going to check how that brain rehab has gone for you, because if you can't get great answers, we know you got to go back and do more barometric pressure. So there's a little slash insult and challenge for you. Can you handle it?
Sounds good.
All right, here we go. The draft just happened last weekend. Who came out on top?
Man, I want to say the Buffalo Bills. Secretly, I'm hoping for the Bengals get Burrow. Hopefully, that'll be the savior for the franchise.
All right. Assuming the NFL season, assuming there is one, which teams do you foresee doing well this year?
Man, this seems uninspiring, but I'll say the Tampa Bay Buccaneers with Tom Brady and the cast of crew they got down there. I'm not just saying this because I work with the Buffalo Bills still. The Buffalo Bills have a tremendous core of talent. I can't imagine the Kansas City Chiefs taking that big of a step back. And then in the NFC, another NFC South team. I like the Saints.
All right. Defensive lineman you didn't want to go up against?
Any defensive lineman in a contract year. And that's a fact, period.
Fascinating. All right. Favorite football memory?
I mentioned it earlier when the Bills went to the playoffs and the Bengals sent us in there. That wasn't an on-field moment. In 2011, we started really hot to the season. We made it to 3-0 and beat the Patriots at home, which was a ton of fun as well.
Other than yourself, greatest center of all time?
Wow, that's a great question. I'll say the late Kent Hall. I've gotten to see a lot of film on his. He's passed. I've become buddies with his son now. But he was the anchor on all those Bills Super Bowl teams. And if you ask Jim Kelly who the MVP was, a lot of them will say Kent Hall.
Fascinating. I was thinking you were going to say Dermontti Dawson, Mike Webster. But
yeah, Dermontti Dawson. Yeah, all great candidates. I gave you another homer answer, though.
You are a Bills guy. Like you know what? You're like asking a kid in Sunday school any question. You ask a kid in Sunday school, what's got a brushy tail and eats nuts? And they go, Jesus? No, it's a squirrel. It's a squirrel. Every answer does not have to be the Buffalo Bills, Eric.
No, you're right. And you know what? 2 years ago when you asked who I thought was going to have a good season, I would have been honest with you, and I wouldn't have put them in my top 4 this year.
Recent thing I've learned about God that's impacting me.
Man, in the current COVID-19 situation, that God's in control. And I was supposed to be out of town for 5 weeks, and part work, part pleasure, vacation with the family. And I got hunkered down in Louisville and didn't miss my Christian gratitude journal one time, didn't miss my Bible reading one time in the morning. I had no excuses, and the consistency from that was tremendous for me.
All right, I'm going to give you. I don't think I've ever done this on the Aggressive Life before, Eric. But I'm gonna do this right now. And if it doesn't go well, I'll just edit it out. Okay, so no pressure. But one of the things I don't like about my job, I'm a pastor by day, is that anything I say about faith or Jesus. Anything I say, hey, this is the way we need to be living our life. God wants this, or the Bible says, there's this kind of cloud that people have of, you have to say that you're a pastor. Oh yeah, well you you went to seminary. You went there. You have to believe those things. There's kind of like you're not normal guy, so therefore I take some of your opinions with a grain of salt. When I get someone like you on, you just happen to mention your journal, talk with God every day. We got normal flesh and blood, manly guy here who's got a lot of experiences and a lot of stuff. Would you just kind of like articulate, pontificate? We're out of the lightning round, by the way. Just who God is to you and why it's important for you having a life that works.
Man, that's a great question. And to your point, I didn't grow up going to church all the time. I went to Catholic schools, but we weren't sitting at Sunday Mass every morning. And when I got to college, I didn't go to church hardly at all. I got introduced to God, a relationship with Jesus Christ in college by our FCA chaplain, Chris Morgan, who showed me that there was more than just attending a service or a Mass than a relationship with Jesus Christ. So God is my foundation. My faith is my foundation. I have, through this COVID-19 deal, I'm challenging my men's group at church that I lead to do a different memory verse each and every week, so that if this lasts 12 weeks, 15 weeks, if you lose your business, if you gain 15 pounds, if you drank too much, whatever it may be, you can look back at this time in your life and say, man, I memorized 12 scripture verses, this and that. And one of mine was Matthew 7:23 and 24, talking about building your foundation on the rock. And the storms came and the streams rose and the wind blew against that house, but it did not fall because its foundation was built on rock. And I feel like these last maybe 7 or 8 years that I've been having this daily walk with God, that my foundation is just so much different. And not that our lives are perfect. I've dealt with serious adversity. I was talking to my men's group one time about how guilty I felt because everyone had all this stuff going on in their life, and I just felt like I was kind of skating by. And one of my buddies looks at me and goes, "You just had a career-ending neck injury." I said, "Yeah, but we have like financial security, and I'm got the woman of my dreams at home, 2 healthy kids. Like, that's not a true storm." And he was like, "Oh, it is." But and that like rocked my world when he told me that, and I was like, I think I finally got a foundation built on the rock. Like, it just clicked for me, and so for me, what that looks like is just every morning, in some way, shape, or form, getting into the Word, and it's amazing what that does for me in the rest of my day.
Yeah, that's fantastic, because you're right. We can think, some of us who are believers can think, well, memorizing the Bible is kind of like brushing my teeth. I guess I should do it, but I never enjoy when I do it. And actually, brushing our teeth, we can all understand, I should brush my teeth because I don't want cavities. Very few of us understand what you just articulated. Having God define our reality, have His Word, the Bible, define our mind and what we should think, and bending it around that, it makes a huge, huge difference in our day-to-day stability.
Yeah, absolutely. And just like brushing your teeth every day may not be fun, but when you go to the dentist, you don't have to deal with the pain of them doing a filling. Putting the Word in every morning may allow you to not deal with those anxious thoughts, deal with severe depression. It may help you get through tough times.
Keep preaching. Come on now. Get on it. Keep going. My goodness. Did you just make that illustration up? That's an amazing illustration.
No, I loved it. I loved how you talked. It hit me when you said about brushing your teeth, how you do it every day because it's good for you, but it prevents that longer hurt.
Yes.
And it's cavities. They're financial. They're time consuming. You got to clear your schedule, and then they hurt like hell. And so if I'm sitting there brushing my teeth in the morning, no, I'm not going to think about all those consequences. But when you memorize scripture and something comes up, and you're able to recite it and fill your thoughts, going all the way back to our original discussion, as a man thinketh, when you fill your head each day with these truths from the Bible, they will show up in your life.
Man, that's really good. I just think of my own life. Every time I've gotten out of alignment with the Word of God, with the Bible, every time it brings me pain eventually. I've had sexual pain from it. I've had financial pain. I have not honored my wife as I should, and I get marital pain. I've been at times overbearing to my children. And the Bible says, fathers, don't exasperate your children. Don't stir your kids to anger. I've done that. and it's brought me relational tension with my kids, sometimes years later, every single time. Maybe that's where we end right now is, ladies, gentlemen, if you want to make an aggressive move, why don't you just pick up the Bible? Go to a Bible app. Go to the Crossroads Church app. Go to some app and here's the thing, when you read it, do what it says. Actually do it. Not philosophize about it, but do it. Eric, you got anything else you want to leave us with today?
So, do you remember at Man Camp, so the one with the really bad storm about a year and a half ago or whatever?
Have you been to Man Camp?
Do you remember me walking in with the garbage bag full of stuff? And you're like,
no.
So I literally had a black garbage bag with all my stuff in it, and you're like, man, this dude's bringing the black garbage bag in, something or other. And my buddies were like, if he knew that you were 1 year removed from a 9-year NFL career and you could definitely afford the nicest luggage and all that. And I was like, yeah, but that's not how I roll. Like, I would rather just roll like this.
I actually do think I remember that. It's so funny seeing people walk into Man Camp, because some people, they just want all the cool latest gear, even though they're never going to use it again. And then other dudes, just like you roll with a garbage bag and all cotton stuff and like, oh, it's 48 hours, I'll be all right.
Yeah,
it's funny to see that.
Yeah, I was sharing a tent with a former Navy SEAL. So he had our tent and everything, and then he had said, put all of your stuff into a black garbage bag, or maybe he was saying like when we get to the camp. And so I had like a nice backpack and stuff, and I had a nice sleeping bag, like for under 0 degree temperature rated, but it was all in this black garbage bag. And they were like, that is perfect that he called you out on that. And then we couldn't believe we had to leave, and my Navy SEAL buddy was the one who was like, no, we need to get out of here. And I was like, Matt, I don't want to take you out of here. I know like what you're all about. And he was like, dude, I'm telling you, we are absolutely soaking wet. Our tent is destroyed. He's like, we're in for a world of hurt if we stay.
That was a brutal night. For those of you who don't know, Man Camp is something we do. That's men come out and we just get back to basics. Sitting around a campfire, talking with people, pooping in the woods, singing together. I mean, guys when they've gone to battle, every major battle they sing together. We're just a bunch of crazy stuff. Well, this one, we bought this piece of land that I swear the weather patterns there are 10% worse than the closest city. And we got utterly pummeled. I mean, tent after tent flattened. I mean, literally flattened. Poles broken and everything. Raining hard. It was cold. We had, I don't know, probably 30% of the camp at 2 o'clock in the morning just walk, I don't know what it is, Eric, a mile and a half back to the car in pitch dark in rain, because they're thinking, if I stay out here, I'm going to get hypothermia and I'm going to die.
Yeah.
It was intense.
And I was all about just staying up all night and hanging out around a fire and taking off in the morning we're at Man Camp, let's prove our manhood. And but when my buddy who was a Navy SEAL said, no, it's not safe for us to be out here, I said, that's probably a sign that we should hit the road.
That's right. Sometimes the most aggressive move is to go home. So, Eric, if someone wants to follow up with you, they want to hear more from you, they want to see what's going on with you, how can they engage with you?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter and Instagram at ewood70, and then I have my podcast called What's Next with Eric Wood, and that's been a fun journey for me, kind of figuring out what I'm going to do post-life in the NFL. I interview people from pastors, so you'll be hit up in the future. Everyone from pastors, former professional athletes, business owners, just people I want to learn from. Man, it's been a ton of fun.
Eric, boy, I tell you what, I really do feel a brotherhood with you. I feel a kinship with you. This is, man, I know I want to keep following up with you. I'm new information. I'm going to be in your podcast. I can't wait to do that. Honored for your time today. You've helped a lot of people, and way to go, man. There you go. We'll see you next time on The Aggressive Life.
Thank you so much.
Hey, thanks for listening. For more aggressive living, head over to briantome.com. Get signed up for the mailing list to get regular shots of positive aggression sent straight to your inbox. And while you're there, you can also find articles, podcasts, and books. I'm also active on Instagram. Search Brian Tome. Special thanks to the band judges for the music. The Aggressive Life with Brian Tome is a production of Crossroads Church, Cincinnati, Ohio.